Now, when I first started using Photoshop, it was great to pick up lots of individual techniques, but the real learning happened when I started to combine all those different techniques together to get a final result. And that's what I want to do in this video. I want to take you through this out of camera picture here that I took of this Lamborghini, have a bit of fun and turn it into something like this. Now, there's a lot of things we're going to cover in this, including the remove tool, object selection and cleaning up a mask. We're going to be using gradients, creating a reflection, using camera raw filter. We're going to be creating a background using artificial intelligence. We're going to use the background eraser tool and possibly the history brush. Now, if you subscribe to my twice monthly newsletter, on the private page that I've got for you, on there I've included the actual file that you can download to follow along step by step. Right, there's a lot to cover. Let's get started. All right, so to start off then, first of all, I'm going to remove the logo and these little patches here that appear on the front and rear tyre. So I'll press J on my keyboard to get the remove tool, and I could simply just start brushing away like this, but what I will do is I'm just going to increase the size of the remove tool using the right square bracket key, press down on one side, hold the shift key down and go to the other side and press down, and it'll join the two together. So that's that fine just there. I'll do the same with the upper logo here. I'll just increase the size of it, maybe to around about there, and press down. Go to the other side, hold the shift key and press down like so. And then let's just cover over this little patch on the tyre just there. And this little patch on the tyre just there. And then press the tick icon in the options bar at the top of the screen. Give it a second or two. And it's done a fantastic job removing those straight away. Next thing I need to do is to make a cutout of this car, because I'm going to put it into a new background. And ordinarily, because of the way the car is with its very, very defined shape and sharp lines, you'd use something like the pen tool to create a really crisp selection. However, I'm going to use the object selection tool and show you how we can tidy up the mask it creates to make it look as if we did it with the pen tool. So I'll come to the toolbar on the left-hand side and I'll get the object selection tool. And we can see here we've got this little icon. Now that would have ordinarily kind of spun around just momentarily while it analyzes the image to see what objects are within the picture. It's already done that. So now look, if I put my cursor over the actual car, you can see the magenta outline, seeing it recognizes that a car's there. So then if I press down, I'll then come out of the tool so it's easier to see this. So I'll go to the move tool. And now we can see we've got the marching ant selection going around it. Now it has missed it just a little bit on this window here. So I'm just going to get the lasso tool, hold the shift key down and just circle around to say, look, I also want you to include this area as well. So that's all done. And it's done a really good job. All these really small areas, look here on the car, it's picked up all of those. It's picked up the fact there's a little gap just there. And also when we look over here, it's done a really good job finding this tiny little bit sticking out the front of the car. So I'm really, really happy with that. So I'll work non-destructively now. I'm going to come to the layers panel and at the very bottom, just click to add a layer mask. So it kind of fakes the look of it being cut out. Then I'm going to add another layer beneath this cutout here. And this will be the start of our background. So at the bottom of the layers panel, we've got the create new layer icon. But if I hold down the command key on Mac or control key on Windows and click on that, that automatically puts it below that current layer, which is great. I'll fill this with white. I could use a keyboard shortcut, but let's just go to the edit menu, choose fill, and in the contents menu here, we'll just choose white and click OK. So that's what we've got. Now let's have a quick look exactly what we've got here. Now we can see straight away that we are actually missing part of the aerial. So if we go to the layer mask, hold down the option key on Mac or alt key on Windows, click on the layer mask to get the layer mask view. We can see we've got that. So what I will do is I'm going to get a brush with a white foreground color, and I'll make sure that the brush is really hard. There we go, something like that. I'll decrease the size of it so it fits the same width of the aerial, and I'll go to the bottom and I'll press down, hold the shift key and press down about there, and it joins it up. So now if I go back to normal view, we've got the complete aerial. That's looking good. However, there's a couple of things we need to tidy up on this at the moment. The first one we're going to tidy up is the tires, because that looks a little bit rough at the bottom. So to make life easier for me, I think I'll do this by, I'll get the elliptical marquee tool from the toolbar, and I'm going to drag out this ellipse just like so, maybe something like that. So it kind of joins those two left and right sides just there, like that. And this area underneath here, outside of the tyre, I'm going to remove that in a moment. But let's just make another selection over on the other wheel as well. So to add another selection, I'll hold down the Shift key, drag it out like so. I'll put it one side of it there and the other side there. So then we've just got that little bit at the bottom to tidy up. Now, ordinarily, when we make a selection, once we've made that selection, anything that we then do will only affect within that selected area. But the reason I've made these selections here is to protect the actual main part of the tyre so that I can then work on the outside to clean it up without kind of ruining the selection that's already been made. Let me just show you what I mean. So at the moment, those selections are kind of including part of the tyre, but it's the outside that I want to affect. And the reason for that is, now that I'm on the layer mask here, if I get a brush with a black foreground colour, and let's say that I want to remove this part here, you'll notice that when I brush in black, it's not doing anything. It's only going to start affecting the image when I go inside of that selection. So anything once we've made the selection, anything that we do happens within it, and we want it to be on the outside. So all I need to do is just go to select, and then we'll go to inverse to invert that selection area. And you'll see now, if I zoom out, you can just about see now, look, we've got the marching ants going around the outside of the image as well. Now I can get my brush with a black foreground colour and very quickly come in and brush that little bit away there, because it's only now affecting what's outside of that selected area. So let's just tidy this up. There you go, just nice and quick, something like that. All right, that's the first part done. Now let's take a look at the layer mask itself, because we need this to be a really crisp selection. And when we zoom in, you can see that although we've got very defined lines in the car, the actual selection itself that's been made with the object selection tool is a little bit on the rough side. So I want to sharpen that up now so it looks as if it was done using the pen tool. So what we'll do first of all then, again, I'm going to get my lasso tool and I'm going to make a selection around the white part of the car, but not including the aerial. Let's just zoom out. I'll get the lasso tool and I'll just make a really rough selection going all the way around the car and coming into that area there. So I'm not including that thin part of the aerial. Then what I'm going to do to smooth out this outline here is, first of all, making sure that I'm active on that layer mask. I'm going to go to the filter menu, choose blur and Gaussian blur. And I'm just going to take the radius down to 0.1, the lowest, which is where we can still see the roughness there on the outline of the car. And I'm going to just drag this up now, bring it up gradually until it gets to the point where we can't really see the roughness. It gets a bit too blurry. And probably around about there is enough. So now that I've done that, we've got the white area of the car, the black area of the background, and this kind of grey area here around the outside that's been blurred. I'll then click OK. Next, I'll get a levels adjustment, not a levels adjustment layer, but instead I'll go to the image menu, choose adjustment and levels. And then what I'll do here, we have the whites, and on the left-hand side, we have the blacks. And I'm just going to slowly drag in the whites towards the center. So going to around about there. And then I'll get the blacks and start to drag those in towards the center there as well. And when I do this, we're creating more contrast in that grey blurred area. And you're probably noticing now, look how much sharper that outline is. We've removed that jagged, rough looking kind of outline. And now we've got this very sharp, smooth looking outline. And you'll notice here, look, that the aerial itself is nice and safe. If I'd have blurred that and then done this, we'd have lost all this aerial. So the reason that initial selection didn't include the aerial was purely to protect it. So now that I've got that, we'll click OK and I'll deselect so we no longer have that going around. And let's go back to the normal view. So now we've got a great cutout of the car. So the next step, what I want to do, this is where I want to start getting creative. We're going to create a reflection and then start looking at building up the background. So to create the reflection, we've already got the cutout of the car. So I'm just going to duplicate this by holding down the Command key on Mac or Control key on Windows and pressing J to jump another copy of it just there. And because of what I'm going to do next, once we've got this reflection, I'm going to kind of use a gradient to only reveal a little bit of it. And doing that means that I don't want to use this original mask, because if I use a black or white gradient on that mask, it's going to start to bring back some of the original background, the road surface and the sky. So I don't want that to happen. So to prevent that, what I'll do, we'll use this bottom one here as the reflection. I'm going to right click on the layer mask, and in here we've got this little option called Apply Layer Mask. And look what happens when I click on this. You'll notice now that the mask disappears, but it kind of bakes in the look of it being a cutout. So if I turn off every other layer apart from this one, you can see here, look, this is what we've got. We've got a cutout of the car and no layer mask, and that's fine for what we need it for. Then I'll go to Edit, and we'll go to Transform and Flip Vertical. I'll then get the Move tool. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and just drag it down. And the reason I'm holding the Shift key is to keep it going in a straight line. So I'll take it to maybe something like that'll be fine. All right, so there's the first part of our reflection. Now, to carry on, I'm going to add a layer mask to it because I want to hide parts of it. First thing to do is to make sure that in my foreground and background colors here, I've got the black as my foreground color. Then I'm going to press G to go to the gradient tool. And in here, we've got the gradient or the classic gradient. I love this new update using the new gradient that we have. Next to it, we're going to choose the gradient that I want. And this here is going to go to the basics folder. And I want the foreground to transparent, which is this one just here. And then the type of gradient is going to be a linear gradient. So now if I just zoom in a little bit, I can press down and drag up. And look what happens as I do. The gradient in real time is being applied, which looks kind of cool. So it's kind of faded it away to that point, but I don't want to see so much of this bottom part here. So we'll just lift this part up. So it starts to hide it. Something like that. I think that's so cool how you can actually work with the gradient in real time. Absolutely love it. So maybe something like that will be enough. And you know what as well? I might actually think about it. I might click on the actual cutout itself over there in the layers panel. And I might just go to the filter menu, choose blur, Gaussian blur, and just a small amount of blur. Maybe 2 pixels just to soften it off because the reflection would not be as sharp as what the original cutout is. All right, let's just click OK. And then I'll click on the uppermost layer. So the next thing I'll do, looking at the car, I think the car needs a little bit more punch. So let's just give that a little bit more life and bring those wheels back to life as well. To do that, I've clicked on the uppermost layer and you can see here I'm clicking on the thumbnail of the car itself. So what I'll do is I'll go to the filter menu and choose Camera Raw Filter. Now there's not much that I need to do in here, so I'm not worried about using a smart object or smart filter at all. It's just a couple of things. So the first one's going to be in the light section. I'll take the exposure and give that a bit of a boost, something like that. Oh, and the reason we can see this is because when we bring that layer into Camera Raw, it ignores the layer mask, but all will go back to normal once we come out. So I've increased the exposure, something like that. Let's give it a little bit of clarity as well on the car, like so. And I think as well, these wheels need just a bit of life. Certainly the rear wheel here doesn't look as exposed as the front wheel. So I'll go to the masking section. I'll choose a radial gradient and I'll just click out and drag a radial gradient right in the center just there. Reposition it in the middle. Then I'll just come to the light section and just give it a little bit of a boost. Something like that. So that is looking a lot better. Now I'll click OK and send it back into Photoshop. So you can see now that's made a big, big difference. So there are a couple of things that I need to do. Obviously, you can tell here that we've got this blue area here appearing on the car as well through the window. And if we turn off that layer mask, obviously what that is the original background. That is definitely going to have to be fixed, especially when we put in this new background that I'm now going to create using AI. So over in the toolbar on the left-hand side, right at the very, very bottom. Now I'm in Photoshop 2025. We've got this little icon here. Now I click on that. This opens up the Generate Image dialog. So what I'll do is I'm going to just type in something like checkered. Oops, try and spell it correctly. Checkered flag. And then I'm going to, the content type, I'm going to say art. And let's have a look for some effects. Lots of different styles that it could create this checkered flag artwork in. But I think I'll just go for, let's just drag down, digital art. Here we go. Let's click on digital art. And then I'll click on generate. Now I'll give this maybe 10 to 12 seconds roughly, and it'll present 3 different variations of that checkered flag art in that digital artwork kind of style. And this is the first. Actually, I quite like that one. Let's have a look at the other 2. Got that one, we've got that one, and we've got that one. So obviously I could, if I wanted different styles and whatever, I could click on generate, I could change the prompt, but I'm just going to stick with this one. I quite like that one. And I think what I'll do first of all is I'm going to desaturate it. So we'll go to image, adjustments, and you'll notice here, look, that desaturate is grayed out. And that's because this is a AI generated image. It's got this little icon on the bottom here. So I need to turn this into just regular straightforward pixels. So I'll right click on it. And down here we have rasterize layer. I could have just come to the layer menu, and then we have rasterize, and then we've got layer. Do exactly the same thing. So now look, that icon's gone in the bottom right hand corner. So now I can go to image, adjustments, and desaturate. Perfect. Right, I'm going to drag that down. Let's put it between, say, this one here just for now. And then I'm going to lower the opacity, bring it right down, just so that there's a hint of it in that background. So that white background isn't quite so just flat and boring. So maybe something like that will be good. I think as well what I will do is just change the perspective on it. Let's just grab the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to drag out a selection going across the whole width of the image, just about there on the tires. And we can see here I'm working on the checkered flag layer, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key, Command on Mac, Control on Windows, and press J. And that's going to cut that selected area out, which we can see just there. If I turn that back up to 100%, you can see that's what we've got. Let's take it down to its original. Okay, let's just turn every other layer back on. And then what I'll do is I'll go to the Edit menu, Transform, and Perspective. Zoom out, and I'm going to click either the bottom left or bottom right pins here and just drag out. And that kind of lifts it up a little bit, just changes the perspective of it so it looks more like the floor. Just to give you an idea of the kind of thing that we can do there. Okay, that's that done just there. So we're kind of getting there, nearly finished on some of the main things that we want to do with this, but I think we definitely need to remove this blue, which is the original sky in that image. So this is how I'm going to do it. We're going to use the background eraser tool. It is an incredibly powerful tool that you hardly ever see demonstrated or hear mentioned. Now, I've done a video on that. This is the video here, how to use the background eraser. It goes into quite a bit of detail about it. The link to the actual video you'll find in the description part of this video. But let me just show you how I would use it. We'll go to the erase tool over in the toolbar here. There's the erase tool, and here's the background eraser tool. We've got the options here available to us in the options bar at the top of the screen. And I'm going to go for the limits. I'm going to say to find edges because it's all very, very defined. You see, because what I want to do here is to remove this blue, but still keep as much as I can this kind of perspex framework on the window. So, because we need to kind of see through this to see the pattern on the wall behind. If I just use the normal eraser tool here, look, I can erase that blue, but if I go anywhere near it, it's just going to remove all of the important stuff there in the window, and it's not going to look realistic. So that's why I'm opting to use the background eraser tool. So we're using find edges, the tolerance there, again, it's all explained in that other video. I'm going to leave this one, I'm going to probably use it around about, I'll go for 9. 9% on the tolerance will be fine. And then what I'll do is just start brushing it away. So I'll just take my time brushing away, and you'll notice here, as is explained in that other video, it's removing the color, but pretty much it's keeping all of that original framework in the window as well. Really, really powerful tool. Absolutely love this. Now I'm going to use this in combination with another technique as well so that we can keep as much of this as possible. But this is definitely helping to kind of get rid of that blue, but also knock through so that we can see through the window as we ordinarily would be able to. So let's just quickly work around over here. I'm not worried too much if I go too far because we have the history brush that can save things as well. In fact, I will go too far. Let's just do that there. So you can see there's a little bit of mistake made there, but I'm going to carry on regardless and just kind of work around, keeping all that framework in as best as I can, like so. Okay, all these little small areas in here, all important to keep those so that it still looks like the window. Such a powerful tool. It really, really is. Okay, just this little bit at the top. Obviously, I'm going quite quickly, but this gives you an idea of how we can use this. Let's just brush that off just there. Oh, a bit too high on that one as well. Not a problem. We can still fix that later. So maybe something like that, I think, will be enough. And again, I have gone fairly quickly on this. But, all right, so that's there. Now, let me just get the history brush here, because now I've done this, I can actually bring back some of the other stuff. The history brush tool is so good. It allows us to almost paint back in time, to bring back what was originally there, regardless of how long or whatever you've done since you originally made the bit of mistake that you need to bring back. So now I've got this history brush tool. I'll come to this area just here. I'll bring the size of it down, and look, I can brush back what I need in that area there. Really, really clever. I've gone too far on that. So I'm just brushing it back in so that we've got the original part of the window just there. All right, brush that down there. That's looking good. Let's soften it down a bit, which is fine. I could keep going, but you get the idea. So now I can kind of brush back everything that I want into that window there. Now, there are other parts. In fact, I've missed this bit here. So let's go back to the background eraser. I'm not going to brush over this part with the wing mirror. Otherwise, it might remove parts of the wing mirror. But I'll get rid of this part just in here. Just take my time. Don't need to rush. Go up tight against the framework of the car and around that wing mirror just there. And in there as well. All right. So we've still got elements of the blue. So this is where, again, we can combine tools and techniques to finesse things. There's not one tool or one technique that will do something outright. We often need to combine things to get the result that we want. And this will be easy to fix. All I'll do is, with the uppermost layer selected, I'll come to the adjustment layers here. And the one I'm going to go for is going to be hue and saturation. So let's have a look for hue and saturation. And I'm going to use this little icon here, a clipping mask, so that anything I now do, any adjustments I make, will only affect the layer directly below, which is the cutout of the car. So I'll click on that. That's now added the clipping mask. So then I'm going to go to the master menu in here and choose blue. But I don't know if all the tones between these two outer markers cover the blue that remains on the wing mirror and the little bits that are in between all the framework. So what I'll also do is click on the plus color sampler just there. And I'm just going to brush around a little bit on some of these other areas. And you'll see, look, how they've changed. So that outer marker on the left has now moved a little bit because there were some tones here that weren't originally included. So now, between this outer point on the right and this one now that's moved over here on the left, between these two markers, all of the blue should now be selected so that when I go to the saturation slider and drag it over to the left, we lose all the blue. And we can now see through that window. Now, there are some bits here I'd need to tidy up maybe, but you get the idea about how we can use that background eraser. But the great thing is now, look, although the patterning on that back wall is probably white anyway, we can still see through the window. And I'll show you that. Look, if I just grab this part of the background and drag it over, see through the window, look now. We've kept the framework, but we can still see through the window. I just think that's so cool. Really, really love that. All right, so I think for now, I think that's pretty much it really, isn't it? That's all we need to do. If I wanted to just show you something for a bit of fun, there's lots of other things we could do now. We could go and use some AI and create some text and what have you. But when you think about what we've done there, we've used quite a few tools, quite a few techniques to simply go from this to this. So I hope that's been useful. It's just a little bit of fun to have a bit of a play in Photoshop, get used to using some of these tools together and these techniques. And like I said, if you are a subscriber to my newsletter, my twice monthly newsletter, go to the private page because there I've added the file that you can download so that you can follow these steps all the way through as well. But for now, for this video, that's all I've got for you. Actually, before I go, just looking at the image at this kind of magnification, there seems to be just a little bit of that blue left in that window framework there. So all I'll do is double click to open up the hue and saturation there, go back into the blues. Here's the settings that I already had from before, but I don't think all of the blues have quite been hit. So I'll come to this marker here, which is the far left marker, and I'll drag it over to the left to include a bit more of those tones. And yeah, sure enough, there you go. That's completely removed it now off the window.